Good morning, everyone. It's January 13th, Friday morning around 8 a.m. Eastern Time. Just going to run through the morning charts real quick. It's Friday. Should be a typically light volume day. Pretty much runs till 11:30 hits. Volume should just kind of dry right up. We'll see what kind of news comes out today and moves the market, but overall, the trend continues to stay up in the equities market, and it's a little overbought here, trading at resistance. Volume isn't anything special, so it's starting to run out of steam by the looks of it, and we've got more or less some pretty major cycles looking like they're topping with the momentum chart and the stocks trading over their 20-day moving average. Let's just take a quick look at the US dollar index and what's going on there. We can see we've got a strong uptrend, and more or less the past week and change we've seen a strong surge in the US dollar index, and since then we've seen it more or less pull back in a nice bull flag pattern still. Overall, it's still in a strong uptrend, and the odds are the trend is not going to reverse. You got to remember the trend is your friend, so it's more likely to continue than it is to reverse, which is why you don't want to fight it. Overall, we still have a bullish pattern. It did have a little bit of a double top here. Didn't quite hit the exact same level, but in looking at it, we've got a 1, 2, 3 wave correction, and the fact that we hit a little new low here, breaking the previous low, that's usually the part that shakes most traders out. Now looking at that level here, we've got a move right into support, which are these previous highs, and now we're starting to get a bounce up there this morning. So more or less for the US dollar index, we can anticipate more or less, probably this is a 4-hour chart, so each candle is 4 hours. From the looks of it this morning, we're probably going to have a continued push higher for probably until 11:30, and then from there we'll probably see it start to stall out and trade sideways or maybe down a little bit. And that coincides well with how the stock market and commodities generally trade. You see a morning move to around 11:30, and then pretty much everything dies off for the day, and there's usually one last push the final hour of the market. So all the investments more or less move very similar in the time frames, and that's kind of, if you just take this chart here, we just started a new 4-hour candle, so going forward here, 8, so that's 9, 10, 11, 12, so around 11:30, 12 o'clock, I would anticipate the dollar roughly to be most likely higher, and that means equities might pull back until that time, and then we'll go into light volume Friday afternoon, and light volume usually favors higher stock prices and commodity prices, so we'd actually see the US dollar taper off because it will have its surge up finished, and of course a falling dollar in the afternoon usually also helps boost equities. So let's just take a quick look at what's going on with commodities this morning. So the US dollar's had a little bounce off support, and we've got crude oil. I pointed this out yesterday that we had that kind of pennant formation here, and that we were getting closer to the apex. And I pointed out in the morning somewhere down here we would probably see a jump right up to that upper level, and then we'd probably see it get pushed back down. Yesterday we actually just saw crude oil more or less just kind of get hammered there in the afternoon, and it broke down out of this pattern, and since then it's had a little bit of a dead cat bounce, and it's continued to head down with the rising US dollar this morning, the last 4-hour candle here. So overall it is trading at a short-term support now, and the question is it going to form some type of bear flag? So if I just clear this chart, I can quickly just sketch in. We could see maybe a possible head and shoulders form here, and we've got a neckline, and if it does have a nice work its way up into this area, which will be a resistance zone on light volume, then it could actually be a shorting opportunity to take a short in crude oil, and it still has potential to come down to the 94 to 91 area, and that would coincide with the US dollar continuing its uptrend, and so that's kind of what I'm looking at right there. Going to gold, here is the 4-hour gold chart. Gold had that move up yesterday. It's been kind of fading back this morning. Looking at just a support level here, we can see we've broken that support zone, and we are trading roughly right at that level again. It's a nice controlled pullback. Overall, it has pierced those highs. We're really on declining volume as this price has moved up, which isn't the greatest sign. Usually we want to see strong volume confirming, and a lot of times gold will do this. It'll pierce a previous high and more or less let everybody kind of jump on board, and then you see it kind of get hammered. So right now I'm neutral on gold. Overall, it's had a strong downtrend. If we just zoom out, it's had a very strong downtrend. So the longer trend here is down, and it's kind of had a bounce up, but it's broken a previous high. So we're kind of getting mixed signals. We got a lower low and a higher high. So it has some work to do before it actually forms a base. Probably want to see some type of price action where it comes down, forms a higher low, and then possibly forms some type of bullish pattern for a breakout to the upside. More or less, it would be more or less like a mini cup and handle pattern. So right now it's mixed signals, lower low, higher high, not really a high probability trade. Silver, pretty much doing the same thing as gold. It's pulled back right into this previous peak over here, and again it's got a lower low and a higher high, so it still has mixed signals. It could go either way. Got to wait for it to form a base, launch pad for it to continue higher, or we need to see it actually start to break down and show some bearish characteristics, and then it would likely go lower. So we just kind of got to hold off on those still. One chart I want to pull up quickly is the VIX volatility index. This measures volatility. Usually when volatility rises, the stock market falls, and this measures volatility expected 30 days out. You can see we've had a pretty major pullback in it. If we were to zoom way back in time, you can see in a bull market, when you've got a strong rally, it can continue to just grind lower and lower for an extended period of time. But what it does is you'll see this these moves come down and then finally see a pop in price, and those are corrections in the market. And right now that's kind of where we stand. We've really headed down quite a bit. If we were to break to a new low here and sell down, I'd be very I'm expecting we'll see a sharp pullback in the stock market any day now, and the VIX would likely jump back to the 24 level, or it could even go a little bit higher and go to about the 26. If we had to, depending on how sharp the correction is, we could go all the way to the 28, which would be a pretty steep dip in the stock market, which is more or less what I'm anticipating any day now, which I'll cover that right now. Looking at the SP 500 daily chart, this is the SPY ETF. More or less, we've seen light volume, and when you get a declining volume on rising prices, that's usually a bearish sign. We are trading up into a resistance zone. We've kind of got this little bit of a runaway market here. It's just kind of grinding and narrowing its range right up into a resistance zone on light volume. We're really not seeing any big waves of buying or any big waves of selling. It's just kind of gone dormant, and the market's kind of just running up. Now what this is doing again is setting itself up for a very sharp decline, something similar to back in here, where you get these huge drops in the market. You just get an extended market that hasn't broken any previous pivot lows, so everybody's ratcheting their stops up, and of course once it starts to run those stops, you'll get orders triggered, and then of course it will have this sharp drop. So that's kind of where we stand. We've got two big gaps here. We've got a pivot low, and a pivot low. If each of those levels get broken, we could see a very sharp decline in the market, which would coincide with a nice support trend line back here, and then we'd reanalyze as that happens. I am interested in possibly looking for a short position here to play this overbought market, but I don't want to jump the gun, especially on a Friday. I don't want to hold through the weekend, and I want to see a bit more on the intraday chart, showing a bit more distribution before I do that. I'm not a fan of trying to pick a top, but during a situation like this where it becomes very defined with resistance and protective stops where people have them placed, you can have a pretty good opportunity for a small and quick correction. Now looking at the SP 500 futures to see where we stand this morning with pre-market and post-market trading. Yesterday, this futures chart here, I'll just show you this these high volume times. It's regular trading hours, so that's 9:30 to 4. This is when the majority of traders are trading. You can see that's where the volume is, and that's when stocks and everything else are trading with the indexes on the exchanges. And then you've got your after hours until midnight. And then you've got your pre-market in the morning, and then you got your regular trading session, and then your evening trading again. And here we have this morning trading session. So yesterday we saw in pre-market we were trading up extremely high, almost hit that 1300 mark, which was just right about up here. Strong wave of selling came in, market came oversold. I pointed out that we're likely going to see the market bounce right about here, and we've had a really nice bounce. Took 50% of that sell-off was given back, and I pointed out this is going to be a good point where it'll probably have some type of maybe go dormant for the day or pull back. It did have a little bit of a pullback, but it continued to grind up into the close and recovered fairly nicely. Now in overnight trading, we saw it head up a little bit, came back down a bit, and then this morning it went back up, tested those highs almost, and now we're starting to see some little bit of distribution selling here, and the market is starting to sell right back down. So we'll see how things play out today. Overall, we're probably going to see some good volume this morning until about 11:30, and then after that I think we're going to see the market trade sideways and become very choppy. Not a market you want to trade if you're a day trader or anything like that. You just want to completely avoid it. So that's kind of where we stand for the day, and kind of go from there. That's it for now. Talk to you in a bit. Bye bye.